listening to Evergreen Media Network. I'm Cindy Schwartz. This is the Patient Partner Show. Jeannie Roller and I talk about different patient histories, different patient scenarios, the ins and outs and the good and the bad of the healthcare that we interview people about. We've had happen to our own, care, our family care, different things like that. And sadly, through the times that we've done this, is it also a podcast on Spreaker as well, and it is on 107.9 FM and also on 1370 AM. It's on iHeart, so worldwide as well. Sadly, we have talked to so many people that things have happened that it was a shocker. They weren't, and we've said this so many times, necessarily informed. Their patient rights didn't seem to really exist. And it's all different states. It's not just in Florida where I am. It's not just by you, Jeannie, in Indiana. We've interviewed so many people in different states. And so oftentimes what we've got is from as answers from the facilities is that you personally have the problem. You, Cindy Schwartz, you, Jeannie Roller, and whatever. And we're just kind of aghast, we are aghast at that being the reasoning when we can't comprehend what has just happened to us. And it's like this scenario isn't what they're telling us, wasn't even anywhere near what we experienced. And it's just kind of I don't want to say cover up isn't the right word. Maybe it is the right word, but that's what we want to talk about today. And they're like, oh, I know in my one instance and two other people that I've talked with that it happened to. One was a gentleman in Minnesota that we had on this podcast, and there was another lady in Alabama that was on here, and they were, saying the same thing that we do, Jeannie, that, they didn't even care about any dignity or any respect or anything like that. And they just likened it to the fact, well, that's the way it is nowadays. We've seen it all. There's nothing that you have that we haven't seen. And, it is what it is. And if you don't like it, go somewhere else. And we're like, okay, well, we will go somewhere else. You should have told us this was going to happen to begin with. That was part of the informed consent that we thought we were signing. So, I'm getting a little bit off a topic. But, Jeannie, you want to talk about what is it, dignity as opposed to humiliation and those kind of things. So let's talk about that.
Well, yeah, I wanted to talk about the difference between embarrassment and humiliation.
Okay.
I mean, embarrassment is something that you might feel even if a medical provider is handling your nudity correctly, such as keeping you covered. You still might have a little bit of embarrassment. Humiliation is where, especially the men I have talked to, is where they go in and, they're told to strip naked in front of a female or be naked entirely in front of the female. And maybe she's doing the prep for some sort of surgical procedure, and she has the guy there laying totally exposed. And, hey, Marge, come in here. Let's talk about what we're going to do for lunch later. Mm-hmm. And she calls in someone just, with no thought to the man's dignity. Mm-hmm. Humiliation is what can lead to serious trauma,
absolutely,
such as mm-hmm. PTSD. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times this humiliation is intentional because most of these medical providers, they are taught differently from what I've seen in textbooks and in course descriptions. I've seen that they are told to be aware and keep the patient covered when they are not working in that specific area, to keep the number of people out of the room during that time, mm-hmm. to provide for patient privacy. So to me, it's intentional when they do this kind of humiliation of patients. Or I heard a show last night where an ICU nurse said, well, I'm comfortable with nudity because I work with patient nudity all the time. Okay, mm-hmm. So you're comfortable with nudity, but are your patients all comfortable with nudity, especially because it is their own? So
it's the patient's own, yeah.
Right. It is the patient's nudity. And, if a nurse is comfortable with nudity, I don't really care. Mm-hmm. It is whether or not I am comfortable with my nudity. That is what I am concerned about. And no, I'm not comfortable having myself exposed unnecessarily. I realize for certain procedures there is a certain amount of exposure. Mm-hmm. I accept that, but I don't accept unnecessary exposure. That's the thing. And I know that a lot of these men, because they have been humiliated in medical care, the strip as you go exam where they're told to drop their pants and bend over while some young medical assistant is in there looking on, those are the people who do not seek medical care because of the humiliation, the trauma involved with how that medical care was delivered to them. And I have seen so many men talk about this, especially. I've had women talk to me about during a pelvic exam that the table is facing the door and some medical assistant or nurse will open the door and come in, and there may be somebody else, another patient walking down the hall. You know, how that affected them, how, you know, they were just like, I'm not going back again for this. It is serious trauma that I don't think the medical community recognizes. In fact, I know they don't, because I don't see a whole lot of articles out there, and I do a lot of research on this because this is one of my main areas besides autonomy. I just don't see them talking about it. They talk about medical students being humiliated. Well, okay, they shouldn't be humiliated, but
right.
And they say that if a physician feels humiliated, he will probably in turn, or she will in turn, then maybe humiliate a patient. Well, why is that acceptable? If you know this occurs, then why aren't you doing more to address this, to stop this? I just don't understand how this can keep going on and on and on. And they know that men don't seek medical care as often as women, and that when they do, it's usually because they have something wrong that could have been maybe prevented or caught earlier.
Well, I don't think the patient dignity, care, all of that is a bargaining chip anyway. I mean, I'm never going to subscribe to that. That's not a bargaining chip. It's a given that that's what is given to the patient when you're there. I don't care if a person has no problems, no qualms with being totally naked in the middle of, you know, Macy's window or whatever, not to beat up on Macy's, but that kind of thing. I get that. That's your own personal thing. But across the board, as a medical professional, you should just it's automatic that you just,
it is.
Yeah, you don't discuss what you're going to have at lunch, and your girlfriend's not walking in the room, you know, your girlfriend, other medical worker walking in the room discussing what you're going to have for lunch, or, you know, how your boyfriend's treating you that night, or your girlfriend, or, you know, whatever, your wife, husband, blah, 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 how your kids are sick or something. That's not, it's just wrong, and it's not right on any level. And as far as just relegating it to, you know, it's our fault, the patient's fault, whoever has the fault with that, that's not right either. And there isn't any fault. It's just the way you do business. It's the same as when you're in customer service, you give customer service. Well, that's what this is. At the end of the day, it's customer service, but it's to the umpteenth degree, and you should have to hold that to the umpteenth degree. Never anything less. And again, go back to the informed consent. If this is a facility that this is where a certain so-and-so is going to happen, then I need to know that so I can make adjustments. If you're putting that on me, then I need to know that. And even if I ask that question, I need to have it answered honestly so I can go somewhere else. I don't have any problem with that, going somewhere else. I can find another doctor, you know. And if that's your way of doing business, then I'm going to go over to the other place. It's just as simple as that. It really is. I mean, so we need to have all this information.
Right. And medical care is a service industry. Yeah, I don't care what they say. They are no different than, you know, the girl at the cash register when you order your hamburger. They are really no different. They are providing a service. So they should be aware of how they are providing that service, because how medical care is delivered can be destructive. And for someone to receive medical care in such a horrible, humiliating way that they decide not to seek medical care again, I mean, what good is medical care at that point? Right.
You're absolutely right. What good is medical care if you're not taking into account the whole patient? On that note, stay tuned to Evergreen Media Network.